I think many people don't realize is that we can actually have quite a simple life where we take care of our needs and then we have the freedom and the choice to live in ways that are between a dog. People's idea of success is something that's connected to a dream. If I have a car, or if I have the big house, or if I have some symbol of my success, I think that's what I want. We can try to help people think about success in terms of what they value in the life they already have. So what is the best part of your life now? What are the things that matter the most? What are the things that you would feel bad if they're gone? And often it's really more about relationships they have. It's about the time they have to do the things they enjoy. When they feel the good feeling for accomplishing something that comes from their own motivation. It's not about how much I get paid when I spend a lot of time doing something I don't really like doing. Lifestyle, okay, now that word, I think you have to pull it apart and say, well, what does it mean? It means how I spend my time. What are the ways I do things that are good for me, the healthy well-being. It means again, I come back to what is my values? What are the things that I'm gonna feel at the end of my life that I lived close to my values. I lived close to the things that matter most to me. It grounds us more in the present instead of a dream about a different life where I have things that I think I want. You know, the problem with a lot of people who accomplish their success is they don't feel successful. They only think, what's my next dream? How can I get more? You know, it's not really what I thought, so now I have to chase after something next. The idea of boredom is interesting because it is a feeling that comes partly from an expectation, partly from the need for stimulation. And I think that's another thing we might want to look at more closely. Am I living a life that's expecting life to always entertain me or stimulate me? Maybe we have to pass through this phase where we have to accept boredom, because when we accept boredom, then we realize that that's part of us. You see, it's not that life isn't what we want it to be. It's that we are expecting it to be something. I don't know if I'm being clear, but that boredom is sometimes something that's telling us to pay closer attention to what is, instead of comparing it to some idea of what it should be. You see, I'm bored because I'm not stimulated enough. Right now, I think stimulation in the world we're in is quite a problem, almost to the point where it's addictive. We expect it always to be quite supercharged. And look at video games and look how quickly we can just turn on something that's going to stimulate us. When people didn't have external, TV and social media, the only thing they had is the time and the place they're in. They learn from the inside how to entertain or to engage themselves, and not be bored with that, to engage the opportunity. Children are a good example. There's a lot of kids here on the street. they always find some way to play. As soon as they have some free time or something, it's natural for us to use the time to find a way to engage ourselves rather than depend on the world to stimulate. You see. We don't spend time with ourselves to know ourselves. That makes us all the more vulnerable to what people are going to be. Survival is a level where fear is always a part of it. You should live as if there's going to be scarcity or not enough, or there's a message that, okay, we have to stay close to survival level. The next generation isn't born into that level, okay? And so their own dilemmas are not about how do we survive. Their own dilemmas are what is the meaning of life? You know, what's worth doing? What are the more the bigger questions about how to live life? You know, and so that disconnect is comes from that. And a lot of the older generation doesn't have sympathy for those bigger questions because they say, no, don't pay attention to all of that. Self-knowledge is kind of knowing who we are, like we might know our friends. Self-knowledge is saying each one of us has a personality, we have tendencies. Some people are much more intellectually inclined, some people are more emotionally inclined, some people live very close to their body and they're kinesthetic. There's some personality inventories like what's the Myers-Briggs. Okay, if you take the Myers-Briggs, it gives you a personality profile. Okay, and you say, okay, I'm introvert, not extrovert. Okay, I tend to be more intuitive than I am sensory. Each one of these things has more meaning than I'm going to explain now, but some people are more thinking and feeling, and so you get a profile. And that way you say, okay, this is my tendency. It doesn't mean you're fixed. Okay, a person who's quite a thinking person can develop and become more emotional. They can learn to access their own feelings more. So, so self-knowledge is understanding that. We're born with certain patterns, certain personality styles. Okay, so self-knowledge is just understanding that about ourselves. But I think the more important thing is self-awareness. So self-awareness is the ability to ask ourselves right now, what am I feeling? What's going on? What's my internal reality telling me right now? What am I feeling? How are my thoughts influencing my perspective or even what I'm saying and doing? And there's a very strong relationship between our emotion and our thinking, particularly when our emotions are quite strong. The more intense our feeling is, the more it gets our thoughts into a spiral. So self-awareness is being able to regulate our emotional and our thought process so that we gain a kind of a stability. Equanimity is kind of the balance of these three parts of ourself. And then self-discovery is the openness that allows us to listen to what we're thinking and feeling. If we do that from the position of self-acceptance, I'm okay, then that information is always teaching us what is it that represents who I am. Okay, what is it that is my truth? And then the next step is, how do I communicate that? How do I represent myself to other people? Okay, so we can learn what we call I statements. So it's, I'm feeling this, or what just happened made me feel quite this feeling or this feeling, or I'm thinking these things. So we represent ourselves from my perspective, in my opinion, from my way of seeing things. This is what it looks like. Okay, so self-discovery isn't where we become some fixed idea. It's to realize that, oh, I'm always learning. I'm always discovering some new things about myself. I'm a work in progress, you see, and that's okay, you see. And even when I feel some confusion or something, that this is my truth right now. So self-discovery is very much connected to self-acceptance, because it allows us to feel safe enough with ourselves to open to the subconscious. That means those things that come up, the things that are coming up and telling us what we're feeling, what we're thinking. Self-realization, some of the terms that come from the field of psychology: self-realization, self-actualization, self-discovery. Okay, almost all of them say that when we are open to ourselves, it also connects us to other people, so that we realize that we're part of humanity, we're part of how we fit in to something bigger than we are. So yes, there's a belief that that is a higher level of consciousness that brings us closer to an ideal. Okay, and that the things that are creating more problem and conflict between people is the unresolved guilt and shame and anger and fear, and those things that keep us from knowing and accepting ourselves. You know, the insecurity and then the compensation. So if I feel insecure, but I don't want people to know that, so then I become more aggressive, because I'm acting as a protection for the self-doubt or the insecurity, the self-judgment I have, you see. So when we get past all of that and we actually accept ourselves and we say, I'm okay, certainly I'm human, I'm going to make some mistake, and but when we get past all of that, then it's empowering to us, but it's also because we're trying to empower others. You see, we're trying to invite people into the same state of acceptance, you know. Well, it's a combination of being willing to do the work on themselves. So to be able to say, yeah, I'm trying to understand myself better. Because maybe what they'll discover in the beginning is how much fear they have that influences their life, or how much anxiety. Okay, those are the obstacles. Those are the things that keep us from feeling comfortable to grow. And when we face our fear, or we realize, okay, that anxiety isn't necessary, then we can overcome it. And yes, we can do that alone. Usually it's better if we have guidance. And so the book that I wrote is called Self-Therapy. In other words, it's a guide to look at all of these things. And if a person is relatively comfortable with themselves, then they can do that work on their own. It's better when they have some other people that are talking about the same ideas, so we don't do it all alone. And sometimes when a person is struggling with that, is why they come to a therapist, a psychologist or psychotherapist, because that then is a place where it's safe, and they can look at those things and they can realize, okay, no one is judging me. These are just the things that came from my past, the messages I believed, the fear that I didn't understand. So we do have to overcome some things. The worst things that people have to overcome is shame and guilt. Okay? Shame is the message that I'm not worth it. I don't deserve to have a good life. I don't deserve life is for me. Because somehow I have the message, or I believe the message, that my value is very low. You see? And it's nothing I did. It's just a message that somehow you're not good enough. That can come in childhood when we feel abused, like the message is you're bad, or neglected, when nobody values us enough to pay attention, to be curious, to want to know you, want to support you. So shame can be underneath. The next one is guilt, which is connected to our behavior. Most of us are taught we have to be good. And if you're not good, you do something bad, then you should feel guilty. And many of us get in the pattern where we have a lot of guilt. And here's the problem. If I think I'm a bad person, then what do? I act bad, you see. If I already believe that I'm something, wrong with me, then I live into that belief. But actually, it's just a belief. It's just something I believe. Maybe because people weren't more sensitive in the way that they treat me, and they realize, oh, he's just learning. Being bad isn't what he really is. Maybe his behavior is bad, but he or she is not bad, you see. So those two things a lot of people have to start to realize. I don't have to believe that about myself. Actually, I'm part of creation and life and all of the beautiful things that a person can be. And there's nobody that deserves to say life is not deserving of that, I would say a sense of self-worth. Okay, but of course it's not easy. I remember I was speaking to a group and the same question came up. Well, what is it that is the foundation or the fundamental thing? And I think without some sense of self-worth, it's hard to grow into what we can become. Okay, that's the foundation. But the harder question is how. If I have low self-esteem and I've been learning all my life that I'm not good enough, and how do I change that? And I would say that sometimes a person can wake up quite quickly, and they can realize that that's a belief that I learned, and it's all it is a belief. There's a truth that's different than that belief, and the truth is a truth that's part of life itself. Okay, I say, what child, at what age does a child suddenly become not good enough? It's not when they're born. We think a baby is such a precious and such an important thing, So when do they suddenly become like, I'm not good enough? It's because the way that we don't understand the sacred and significant part we play in this bigger thing called life. So sometimes we can wake up quite quickly to that and realize that what we're believing is just a holding idea. Okay, but a lot of times we have to work our way through that. We have to catch ourselves when we're having negative self-talk and feeling guilty about things that we shouldn't feel guilty. We have to realize this is what I do to myself, and I can turn that around. I can stop that, and I can discover when I don't feel so much guilt or shame that I can feel better about myself. Now that's still tricky because we often attach a positive reward to our behavior. See, if I perform good enough, then I deserve to feel good enough. And it's also a false connection. Our performance and our behavior is not who we are. Okay, it's a reflection of what we do, but we have an essence that's connected to life itself, I say, is connected to humanity. I'm a human, and I'm connected to the oneness of humanity. And when I discovered that my role in that is to raise that awareness, what we can make humanity, what gives us joy, what we appreciate, what is the feeling that we had, what was that connected us directly to the experience that we're having, you see. And that then becomes what we organize our life around. We won't sacrifice those things, okay? Because those are the things that make life worth living. Well, I would say that if we live in the present, okay, then the present always has something to make life interesting, okay? Beauty is around us all the time. It's just we don't see it. The same thing is true in a relationship. There's always something that's new or different, or a way to discover something in each other. But I think it's also important that we recognize if we're starting to feel that boredom or like something is missing, that we need to understand the process is one where we step in, but we also can step back. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be song.
But if you fall alone.
I even sometimes make a joke about the word happy. You know, happy birthday, or I hope you're happy. I said, well, maybe that's too much to expect. You know, happy is a good feeling, but it's probably not a realistic expectation for a lifetime, you see? And if we take that expectation out, then we start to say, oh, actually, okay, makes us happy. It's not something beyond, it's something here now, and that's enough. Yeah, very hard, but you know, when you really need Targ bomb, you can find a way, you know. Slippery.
Oh, wow!
See, I can't say I'm Vietnamese, but I can say I live in Vietnamese long enough to figure out something.